Honestly, I think this is pretty interesting when it comes to the ACOTAR fandom in particular, is that I think because a lot of people coming into the ACOTAR fandom and the SJM fandom, I can't speak to everyone in the ACOTAR fandom, but I feel like a lot of us in the fandom haven't had a lot of experience with really, really deep world building lore and character lore and things like that, and just a lot of different things that you got to keep track of. Like, I think a lot of us came in wanting to see these powerful women bang their winged men. I, for one, have always been a world building girly and a lore girly, and my time in the Lost fandom definitely solidified that. But I also feel like my time in the Lost fandom, and probably your time in the Lost fandom, and other fandoms like this, I feel like we learned proper decorum when it comes to theories and ship wars, and a lot of the people who are in the ACOTAR fandom right now are learning that etiquette as they go. Like, yes, the ACOTAR ship war is very fraught and it gets very intense, but nothing, absolutely no ship war that I could possibly think of topped the way people got feral about this love triangle. There were other girls who came in and out of this love triangle, but really this was the crux of it. Like, this show has been over for almost 14 years, and I still have a couple of friends with whom I argue about this ship war with. That's how deep the lines, the battle lines for this ship war went. We also got to talk about the level of detail that Lost had and the way that the fans really latched onto it and were able to create like several different sources that allowed us to document and theorize based on the very consistent world building that there was. Like, you see this map? I do not think this was an official map. Somebody, like a fan, made this map as a result of the show being that detailed and that accurate and that attentive to detail. Lost is also the first fandom that I can think of personally that really utilized the internet as a way to connect the fans to the cast, to the crew, and that kind of thing. And they made sure that there were like rules in place. Like, you couldn't go on the fuselage.com and ask anybody like an out-of-pocket question. And I feel like that's been lost in the fandom world since then. Like, I mean this with all the love in the world. There's no reason for certain things that I see in the Swiftie fandom. And there's no reason for some of the shit I see in the ACOTAR fandom too. Like, I feel like there's a lot of times where things get dicey argument-wise and debate-wise because we're crossing over into certain territories, especially in the ship war. It can get a little icky, and it can get, like, I hesitate to say mean, but I feel like some of us forget that there are people on the other side of these phones and on the other side of these devices. So honestly, I feel like I can definitely relate to you. I remember getting emails from email chains from Lost Theorist communities. So like the nostalgia I felt when I saw this comment. But I really do think that there needs to be some kind of reckoning in the fandom community, or like a new fandom that can come out and kind of be the change that the fandom community needs to see in the world. I feel like Lost was that in regards to how the fandom connected with the people making the show and people writing the show and people acting in the show. And there was always like rules in place, and there was always boundaries in place to make sure that I think nobody felt uncomfortable or anything like that. I feel like the Lord of the Rings community also had this, but I also remember being like a 12, 13-year-old girl in Lord of the Rings forums and getting laughed out of there. People thinking I was like a Legolas fangirl just because I was a Lord of the Rings fan at that age. So this isn't quite the same. And also, given the whole Rings of Power shit of today, I feel like I personally feel that way about the Lord of the Rings fandom, but it's not really like that. And there are just pockets of this fandom that can get toxic as hell. But like the Lost fandom was a real bright spot in the fandom world, in the sense that I don't remember there being any nastiness in this fandom. maybe it was because I was 14 when I started watching the show, when the show came out, and I was watching it with friends, and when I was online, I wasn't dealing in like the major arguments, so maybe I'm wrong. But speaking as like an old head fangirl, the Lost fandom could really teach the Akatar fandom and some fandoms of today a thing or two about proper decorum on the internet.